I was 25 when I first met her. She wasn't just my boss, she was the kind of woman who could walk into any room and silence it without saying a word. At 35, she carried herself with the grace of someone who knew exactly who she was. Her crisp white shirts, the confident way she wore her heels, and that calm authority in her voice, all of it fascinated me from the very beginning. At first, I told myself it was just admiration. She was brilliant, elegant, and every word that left her mouth seemed dipped in wisdom. But slowly, something inside me shifted. I found myself watching her when she wasn't looking, memorizing the way her lips curved into a smile, the way her fingers played with the edge of her pen during long meetings, or how she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear when she was concentrating. It was dangerous, falling for your boss always is. Yet my heart never asked for permission. I started living for those moments when it was just the two of us in the office, the hum of the air conditioner filling the silence as we worked late into the night. Sometimes she would lean over my desk, pointing at a report or correcting a mistake, and her perfume would drift around me, subtle, floral, intoxicating. My breath would catch, and I'd pray she didn't notice. But maybe she did. There were nights when our laughter echoed through the empty corridors, long after everyone else had gone home. She wasn't the untouchable figure then. She was soft, playful, letting her guard down in front of me. I remember one night in particular. We had been working until midnight, finishing a client presentation. When she finally closed her laptop, she leaned back in her chair and sighed dramatically. "You," she said, pointing at me with a tired smile, "deserve a medal for surviving me." I laughed, shaking my head. "I'll settle for a coffee instead." The way her eyes lingered on me in that moment made my chest ache. It was as if she wanted to say something but held herself back. And for the first time, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, this wasn't one-sided. The tension grew in the weeks that followed. Subtle touches became harder to ignore, her hand brushing mine when passing a file, her shoulder leaning against mine when we shared a screen. Every glance lasted a heartbeat too long, every smile seemed laced with meaning. Then came the night that changed everything. We had stayed late again, working on another endless project. The office was quiet, the city lights glittering outside the windows. I was yawning, fighting exhaustion, when she stood up and came to my desk. She leaned down, her hand resting on the edge of my table, her face so close I could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. "You work too hard," she said softly. I froze, my heart thundering. "I'm just trying to keep up with you." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "Do you ever feel like something is pulling you toward someone, no matter how much you resist?" I couldn't answer. My throat had gone dry. But I knew she could read the answer in my eyes. And then she kissed me. It was gentle at first, tentative, as though she was afraid I would pull away. But the second our lips touched, all the tension of the past months ignited between us. I kissed her back with all the longing I had hidden, my hands trembling as they reached up to her shoulders. She deepened the kiss, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged completely in someone's arms. When we finally pulled away, both breathless, she rested her forehead against mine. "I shouldn't," she whispered, almost to herself. "But I can't stay away from you." I smiled, my heart soaring. "Then don't." From that night on, we were no longer just boss and employee. We were lovers. Our romance lived in the quiet corners of the office, stolen kisses in the elevator, her hand brushing against mine in meetings, secret smiles across the conference table. We lived for the moments when the world wasn't watching, when she could hold me close, and I could lose myself in her warmth. Every touch, every kiss felt like magic. With her, I wasn't just a young girl chasing success. I was someone cherished, desired, loved. She was my strength, my secret, my everything. For the first time in my life, I felt complete. I thought we had forever. In my heart, I believed that the way she kissed me, the way she held me as though I was the most precious thing in her life, meant she felt the same. For months, we lived in that secret world of ours, sharing stolen touches, Whispered promises and dreams we never spoke out loud but silently built in each embrace. And then, one evening, she shattered it all. We were sitting in her office. The blinds were closed, the glow of the city spilling through the cracks. She looked nervous, her hands restless, twisting the pen on her desk. I thought it was just stress from work, but then she raised her eyes to mine, and I knew instantly that something was wrong. "There's something I need to tell you," she said softly, her voice trembling. My chest tightened. "What is it?" She hesitated, then finally whispered, "I'm getting married." For a moment, I didn't breathe. The words didn't make sense. They bounced around in my head like echoes in an empty room. Married? To me? The thought flickered foolishly in my mind before she continued, her lips trembling. To a man. My family, they've arranged it. It's happening soon. It felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. My heart pounded so violently it hurt. I stared at her, trying to find some sign, some hint that she was joking, but her eyes were already wet with tears. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "You don't mean that. Not after everything between us. Not after us." Her tears fell then, silently, and she reached for my hand. "I do mean it. I have to do this. You don't understand the pressure, the expectations. It's my only choice." Her hand was warm, familiar, and yet it burned like fire. I pulled away, feeling as though my heart had just been torn apart. "How can you say that?" My voice cracked, raw with disbelief. "How can you talk about choice when you already chose me?" My throat closed around the words. She stood then, her shoulders shaking. "I love you," she admitted, her voice breaking, "but I can't build a life with you. Not in this world. Not with the way things are." The finality of her words sliced through me. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of pain. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her smile, felt her kiss, remembered her whispering my name against my skin. The scent of her perfume clung to my clothes. The memory of her touch burned into my flesh. My pillow was stained with tears I couldn't stop, my chest heavy with a grief I didn't know how to carry. Loving her had been my brightest light. Losing her was my darkest night. Time has a cruel way of forcing you forward, even when your heart insists on staying behind. After she left, I thought I would never breathe without pain again. The first few months were unbearable. Every corner of the office reminded me of her. Every quiet evening replayed her laughter in my head. But eventually, grief hardened into something else, determination. If I couldn't have love, I would have success. I buried myself in work with a desperation that bordered on obsession. Early mornings, late nights, weekends, I gave every ounce of myself to climbing the ladder. My colleagues admired my dedication. They saw me as ambitious, driven, unstoppable. What they didn't know was that work was the only thing keeping me from falling apart completely. Numbers, reports, and deadlines couldn't break my heart the way memories could. Step by step, promotion by promotion, I rose higher. Within 5 years, I had achieved what most people my age could only dream of. At 30, I was sitting in the CEO's chair, commanding respect from an entire company. People looked at me with awe, whispering about the young woman who had built herself from nothing, who had conquered boardrooms with confidence. But behind the glass walls of my office, I often felt hollow. Success was supposed to feel like victory, but instead it felt like armor, polished, strong, and suffocating. I wore my titles like shields, hiding the truth that no award, no salary, no applause could ever fill the emptiness she left behind. At night, when the city glittered outside my penthouse window, I would pour myself a glass of wine and stare at the skyline. To the world, I was powerful. To myself, I was still that 25-year-old girl who had once cried herself to sleep over a love she couldn't hold on to. I tried to forget her. I really did. I told myself she had chosen her path, that I had to move on. But forgetting her was like trying to forget my own reflection. It was impossible. Little things brought her back to me. The faint scent of jasmine when someone passed by, the sound of heels clicking on marble floors, a sudden laugh that echoed too closely to hers. And then there was the photograph. It sat hidden in the bottom drawer of my bedside table. A simple snapshot we had taken on one of those rare nights when the office felt like ours alone. She had leaned against me, her arm draped casually over my shoulder, both of us smiling in a way that only two people in love could. I told myself 1,000 times to throw it away, to tear it to pieces, but I never did. Sometimes, in the quiet hours when loneliness pressed too hard against my chest, I would open that drawer and trace her face with my fingers. My lips would tingle with the memory of her kiss, my body would ache with the phantom of her touch. And yet, when the morning came, I would tuck the photo away again, hiding it like a guilty secret. She had once given me a scarf too, soft and blue, claiming it didn't suit her but looked perfect on me. I kept it in my closet, untouched, as though wearing it would summon her ghost. On colder nights, I would wrap it around my shoulders, inhale its faint scent that had somehow survived the years, and let myself believe for a moment that she was still holding me. I told myself I was healed, that I had outgrown her, that the woman who had left me for a life she thought better no longer had power over me. And yet, deep inside, I knew the truth. She was still the wound that never fully closed. Even at the height of my success, surrounded by admiration and wealth, there were nights when I would trade it all just to hear her whisper my name again. New York had always felt like a city of beginnings, a place where people came to chase dreams. For me, though, it was supposed to be just another business trip. Meetings, contracts, handshakes, I had long trained myself to focus only on work. Love was not something I allowed myself to think about anymore. But fate has a way of rewriting the script when you least expect it. I had just finished a boardroom presentation with a group of investors. The morning had been exhausting, my head buzzing with figures and strategies. I decided to take a short walk before the next meeting, hoping a coffee would steady my nerves. That's when I pushed open the door of a small cafe tucked between towering glass buildings. The moment I stepped inside, the world tilted. There she was. Behind the counter, in a plain apron, her hair tied back, no trace of the confident, polished woman I had once admired. Her hands moved quickly as she prepared a drink for a customer, her eyes lowered. For a second, I thought I was hallucinating. My heart slammed against my ribs, my breath catching in my throat. 5 years had passed since the airport goodbye. 5 years of trying to erase her from my soul. Yet one glimpse of her, and it all came rushing back, the warmth of her arms, the taste of her lips, the sound of her laughter in the quiet of night. I froze, torn between running out the door or stepping closer. And then she looked up. Our eyes met, her hand stilled, the cup she was holding trembling before she set it down. For a heartbeat, we just stared at each other, suspended in silence while the world carried on around us. Her lips parted slightly, her eyes filling with tears that she blinked back furiously. I don't know how my feet carried me forward, but before I knew it, I was standing at the counter, my voice shaking. Hi. She swallowed hard, her voice barely audible. You. The cashier beside her glanced between us curiously, but she quickly muttered something and disappeared into the back, leaving the two of us alone in the rush of the cafe. Can you? Her voice faltered, and then she whispered, wait for me. I nodded, unable to trust my words. Minutes later, she slipped off her apron and walked toward me. I followed her to a small corner table by the window. She sat across from me, her hands trembling as she clutched a napkin. For a long time, neither of us spoke. She was the one who broke the silence first. Her voice cracked. You look incredible. A CEO now. She gave a broken laugh, shaking her head. I knew you would be. My throat tightened. I didn't want to talk about me. My eyes scanned her face, the hollowness under her eyes, the faint lines of exhaustion. This was not the woman who had once ruled boardrooms and my heart with equal confidence. This was someone who had been through storms I couldn't imagine. What happened? I finally whispered. That was when she broke. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she tried to hold herself together, but her voice betrayed her pain. He divorced me. A year after the wedding. Just walked away, said I wasn't enough. I was too difficult, too distracted, too everything. She buried her face in her hands. I was left with nothing. No money, no support. Just shame. I couldn't face anyone, least of all you. Her words tore through me. I wanted to come back, she confessed, looking up at me through wet lashes. So many nights I thought of calling you. But I couldn't. I had hurt you so deeply, betrayed what we had. I thought you would hate me. I reached across the table, taking her shaking hands in mine. Her skin was cold, her fingers frail. I could never hate you, I whispered. You broke me, yes. But hate? No. Her eyes searched mine, desperate and uncertain. I never stopped thinking of you. Not one day. Every success you had, I followed it. When I heard you became CEO, I cried. Cried because I was proud. Cried because it should have been me standing beside you, not just watching from the shadows. The cafe noise faded away. All I could hear was her voice. All I could feel was her hands trembling in mine. I'm sorry, she whispered again and again, like a prayer, as though repetition could erase the years of silence between us. I'm sorry for leaving, for not fighting, for everything. My vision blurred with tears. I squeezed her hands tighter. You don't have to apologize anymore. I understand now. You did what you thought you had to do. But you're here. That's all that matters. She shook her head, tears slipping freely. I don't deserve your kindness. I don't deserve you. I leaned closer, my voice firm. You're wrong. I spent years building walls around my heart, but they never kept you out. You were always there, in every success. Every night I stared at the city lights and wished you were beside me. And now you are. Her shoulders shook as she broke down completely, leaning forward until her forehead rested against my hands. Instinctively, I reached across the table, cupping her face, lifting her chin. Her eyes were swollen with tears, but in them I saw the woman I had loved, the one who once kissed me under dim office lights, the one who had been my whole world. Emotions flooded through me, grief for what we lost, anger for the pain she caused, and love, undeniable, unshakable love. And for the first time in 5 years, I smiled through my tears. Come back to me, I whispered. She let out a sob, nodding, her hands clutching mine as if she'd never let go again. The cafe meeting had ended, but my heart refused to. I walked back to my hotel room that night, her voice still echoing inside me, her tears still shimmering in my memory like drops of rain that refused to dry. I should have been angry, furious, even. She had left me. She had broken me. She had chosen someone else when I was ready to give her the whole universe. And yet, when she cried in front of me, I couldn't see her as the villain of my story. I only saw the woman I had once loved so deeply and perhaps never stopped loving. Sleep evaded me that night. I turned over in bed, staring at the ceiling, my chest rising and falling with the weight of 1,000 memories. Her smile in the office late at night, the warmth of her hand brushing mine across the desk, the way she kissed me like I was air and water and fire all at once. I remembered the day she left, how cold her absence felt, like winter had taken root inside me. And now she was here again, broken, fragile, and yet still her. My heart felt like a battlefield, love against resentment, longing against fear. The next morning, I couldn't resist. I texted her, meet me tonight. Her reply was instant. Tell me where, I'll be there. We chose a quiet corner in Central Park. The city buzzed around us, but under the trees, time seemed to pause. She was already there when I arrived, sitting on a bench with her hands nervously clasped together. When she saw me, her eyes widened with a mixture of relief and dread, like she had been bracing herself for rejection. I wasn't sure you'd come, she whispered, her voice trembling. I almost didn't, I admitted honestly, standing in front of her. But then, I thought about how you looked last night, and I couldn't stay away. Her eyes welled up instantly. I don't deserve even a second chance to stand in front of you. I took a slow breath, my chest tightening. Maybe you don't. But I also know that. I don't want to keep hating you anymore. I've carried that pain for too long. She broke down then, covering her face with her hands, shoulders shaking. I sat beside her, hesitant at first, then gently pried her hands away from her face and held them in mine. Her palms were cold, trembling. I rubbed them softly, trying to give warmth. Look at me, I whispered. She lifted her gaze, her eyes swimming with guilt and sorrow. I'm sorry, she choked. I thought marrying him was the right thing. I thought it would make me normal. I thought I could bury what I felt for you. But every night, every single night, I thought of you. And when he left me, the first thought I had wasn't even about him. It was. I lost her. I lost the only person who ever truly loved me. Her words sliced through me, but not with anger this time, only with aching tenderness. I reached up, cupping her cheek. She leaned into my touch as if she had been starving for it for years. I don't care about the past anymore, I said, my voice breaking as tears pricked my eyes. I don't care about the mistakes or the years we lost. All I care about is this moment. You and me. Right here. Right now. And then, without planning it, without thinking, I leaned in. Our lips met in a kiss that was nothing like our first. It was deeper, heavier, soaked in years of pain, regret, and longing. Her tears mixed with mine, our mouths pressing together desperately, hungrily, as though we were trying to make up for every lost second. I felt her clutch my waist, pulling me against her, her body trembling with both relief and desire. I kissed her back with everything I had, every wound, every ache, every leftover piece of love that had survived the storm. When we finally pulled apart, breathless, she rested her forehead against mine. I missed you, she whispered, voice raw. I missed you too, I admitted. More than I wanted to. We spent the evening walking through the streets of New York, fingers interlocked, as if letting go would mean losing each other all over again. She told me about the years she had spent surviving, working small jobs, trying to keep her dignity intact, battling loneliness. I told her about my rise to CEO, how success felt hollow without someone to share it with. Somewhere between the skyscrapers and the neon lights, we found ourselves laughing again, softly, shyly, as though the years hadn't passed at all. When night fell, I took her to a quiet restaurant with candlelit tables. The waiters moved around us, but I barely noticed. She sat across from me, her face glowing in the golden light, her eyes fixed on mine as though she was afraid I might disappear. I don't deserve your forgiveness, she said for the 100th time, her fork untouched. And yet, I replied, reaching across the table to take her hand, you have it anyway. Because I never stopped loving you, no matter how hard I tried. Her lips trembled, and I saw tears threatening again. She squeezed my hand. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. If you'll let me. I smiled through my own tears. I'm not asking for perfection. I just want you. That's all I ever wanted. That night, after dinner, we walked by the river, hand in hand, our hearts finally free from the weight of the past. She leaned against me, her head on my shoulder, and whispered, for the first time in years, I feel like I'm home. And as I held her close, I realized that maybe forgiveness wasn't about erasing the past, it was about choosing love over pain, choosing hope over fear. And in that moment, under the New York night sky, I chose her. Again. I hailed a car and didn't even notice the honking until we were already gliding away from the park. The city lights blurred into a ribbon of gold and silver outside the window, but all I could see was her, the way she pressed her fingers into mine as if anchoring herself to the present, the fragile hope trembling behind her eyes. I had booked a suite at the hotel I always used for meetings when I was in town, an entire floor with glass walls that looked out over the Hudson. It felt extravagant, but I wanted tonight to be gentle, to be safe, to feel like a new start without the jagged edges of the past cutting through us. When we arrived, she hesitated at the door of the suite, her hand hovering on the handle like she was afraid opening it would shatter whatever fragile piece we had just found. I stepped forward and opened it for her, and the soft, warm light that spilled out seemed to welcome her in. The room smelled faintly of fresh linen and citrus. Someone had placed a small bouquet on the table. I had asked for nothing more than privacy, but I wanted it to feel like a refuge. She walked in slowly, eyes wide, taking in the plush couch, the low table, the view that spread out like a map of possibilities. Her shoulders hunched as if she were trying to make herself smaller, ashamed of occupying so much space after years of hiding. My heart clenched at the sight. I set my bag down and watched her, committing every small motion to memory, the tilt of her head, the way her lips pressed together when she was unsure. "You don't have to stay if this is too much," I said quietly, even though I knew she wouldn't run. She laughed, a sound like a broken bell, and then looked at me with something like wonder. "Why would you give me this?" she asked. "Because you deserve a place without judgment," I replied. "Because tonight is about us, and I want you to feel safe." I moved closer, slowing my steps so she could see I meant every word. The closer I got, the more her composure dissolved. She wrapped her arms around herself, as if to hold in all the fragments of herself she'd spent 5 years collecting. I sat on the edge of the sofa and patted the cushion beside me. "Sit," I invited. She perched there like a bird on a wire, tentative, scanning me for signs I would change my mind. I reached out and tucked a stray curl behind her ear, brushing my thumb across her cheek. Her skin was cool under my touch, but it warmed quickly, and I could feel the tremor that ran up her spine. "I'm scared," she confessed, so soft I almost missed it. "Not of you. Of failing again. Of hurting you. Of losing you." "You won't," I answered, and the words were a vow. "I promise I won't let you." "Not this time." We talked for hours, though the conversation was not always words. Sometimes it was the way she leaned into me when I told a story about the absurdity of a board meeting, or the way she traced the rim of her glass when she was thoughtful. I asked about the small jobs she had taken, about the lonely nights, the calls she never made. She answered with quiet honesty, her voice knitting back together the years she'd spent silent. As the night deepened and the city outside slowed, the conversation shifted into something softer. I reached for her hand, and she didn't pull away. I moved closer, and she closed the small gap between our knees with an almost imperceptible shiver. The build-up was not frantic. It was deliberate, the careful unwrapping of two people who had once loved fiercely and now needed to relearn the contours of each other's bodies. When our faces were inches apart, I paused and searched her eyes for consent, for the small signals that had once guided me so well. She nodded once, almost imperceptibly. And I kissed her. Not a greedy kiss, but an intentional one, slow, tender, a promise folded into each press of lips. My hands framed her face, fingers tracing the curve of her jaw, learning what time and sorrow might have changed. Her arms curled around my neck as if she were reclaiming the most familiar place on earth. She began to cry, soft gasps punctuating the kiss. Her tears were salt and relief, the release of all the fear she'd held like ballast. "I thought I lost you forever," she murmured against my mouth, words muffled by our closeness. I wiped her tears with the back of my hand, my thumb lingering to dry the last wetness from under her eye. "You're mine now," I told her, and the sentence felt both fierce and tender. "And I won't let go again." She sobbed into my shoulder, then looked up at me with those same desperate, hopeful eyes. I gathered her into my arms and held her as if she might dissolve, cradling her like the rare, delicate thing she had become. The kiss resumed, deeper this time, not out of lust, but out of a need to heal, to trace old scars and lay hands on them until they stopped hurting. Our rediscovery was slow and reverent. We explored each other's faces like cartographers mapping a beloved country, the dimple at the corner of her mouth, the habit of her brow when she concentrated, the small scar along her wrist where she'd once cut herself on a paper edge in an old office. Each detail was a story, and we told each other those stories with whispers and long looks. She slid to sit on my lap before I realized what she had done, and I wrapped my arms around her waist, my hands finding her lower back in a place that was achingly familiar. There was urgency now, yes, but it was braided with care, soft touches, lingering caresses, fingers that memorized the plains and valleys of skin and bone as if to ensure they would never be strangers again. At one point, her breath hitched and she pressed her forehead to mine. "I'm sorry for all the time I stole from you," she said, voice small. "You didn't steal time," I corrected gently. "You lost it. We both did. We can take it back one day, 1 hour, one kiss at a time." She smiled through tears, relief and gratitude flooding her features. The rest of the night passed in the quiet intimacy of two people reknitting themselves together, talks about tiny future plans, about things she wanted to do again, about dinners and lazy mornings. I tucked her under the blanket on the sofa when sleep finally claimed us, her head resting against my chest, her breath slow and even. As I held her, feeling the steady beat of her heart against mine, I promised myself to be the place she could return to without fear. The luxury of the room meant nothing compared to the safety of being wanted and wanted back. Outside, the city kept moving, lights blinked, taxis whispered by, life unfolded in 1,000 separate stories. Inside, in the hush between us, our story was beginning again, tender and real, rooted in care as much as desire. The first rays of dawn painted New York in soft shades of gold when I opened my eyes. She was still asleep, curled into me as though the night had given her permission to finally rest. Her breathing was steady, her lips parted slightly, her hand clutched at my shirt like she was afraid I might slip away if she let go. I pressed a kiss to her forehead and held her tighter, feeling an ache so sweet it almost broke me. This was real. After all the years, all the pain, all the nights I thought we would never cross paths again, she was here, in my arms. When she stirred, blinking up at me, her eyes softened the way they always had when it was just the two of us. She whispered, almost afraid to speak too loudly, "I don't deserve this. I don't deserve you." I brushed a strand of hair from her cheek and smiled. "You deserve everything and more. You deserve a life where you don't have to hide, where you don't have to apologize for existing. You deserve to be loved the way you always should have been." Her lips trembled, her eyes filling with tears. "And you're still willing to give me that? After everything I put you through?" "I don't care about the past anymore," I said firmly. "What matters is now. What matters is us. No shame. No fear. Just love. Come back with me, let's build something new together." For a moment, silence hung between us, heavy with years of longing. Then she nodded, a slow, trembling nod, and fell against me, hugging me with all the strength left in her. "Yes," she whispered into my neck. "Yes, I'll go with you. I'll go anywhere as long as it's with you." I felt her gratitude, her relief, in every tear that dampened my skin. I kissed her hair, her temple, her lips slow, reverent, sealing the promise we had both been too afraid to make before. The hours that followed blurred into something warm and timeless. We didn't need grand gestures or dramatic speeches. We simply lay there, wrapped in each other, relearning the comfort of shared silence. The world outside could rush and demand and roar, but in that room, in that bed, there was only us. Later, as the morning brightened, she tilted her head and kissed me deep, lingering, filled with all the things words could never carry. It was a kiss that spoke of forever, of forgiveness, of second chances turned into a lifetime. For the first time in years, I felt peace settle into my bones. I hadn't just found her again, I had found my faith in love, my belief that even the deepest wounds could heal if two hearts were brave enough to try again. And as her smile curved against my lips, I knew this wasn't the end of our story. It was the beginning.